this new breaking story out of the New York Post regarding the accused Jan 6 pipe bomber Brian Cole Jr., where it turns out that he has a secret online life obsessing over My Little Pony. And this is from Jacqueline Sweet over there. So he's accused of attempting to blow up the RNC and the DNC. Active My Little Pony fan, seemingly obsessed with toys marketed, as we know, young girls. And he wrote fan fiction about them. He created art about them. He even wrote songs about My Little Pony. And he also had ties in with Star Wars and many other things. And so what's interesting to me is that he has this tie between My Little Pony and Star Wars. And then you also saw Tyler Robinson, the guy who's accused of killing Charlie Kirk, was a furry, was obsessed with furry culture. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the man who took a shot at President Trump, kills Corey Compatore up in Butler, Pennsylvania, also had an account on DeviantArt, which is a similar website. What is going on here?
Yeah, it's a conversation that's very important to have, Jack, because I mean, I'm thinking even beyond those examples, the shooter at Annunciation Catholic Church, which took place only a month before Charlie's
Yep.
death, the Covenant school
2
shooter
weeks
in
before.
Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, it was very shortly before. Both of those killers as well were, they identified as transgender and they had all kinds of rantings and writings about their gender identity and their fixation on these concepts. But particularly when it comes to these killers nowadays, or these attempted killers, there's this disturbing pattern of an interest in whatever, like, I don't even know the right word to call it, childlike interests, but also in things that are bordering on sexual. So if you look at what the New York Post reported about these My Little Pony obsessions of his, there's one very graphic, violent description of how someone dies and their flesh peeling off of them. And it's not inherently sexual to read it, but you read it and you're just disturbed. There's a very disturbing element to it, particularly because he's writing about My Little Pony, which is a children's toy specifically for little girls. There's a show about it. It's very childlike. It's very, I don't know, even know if you could say like infantile. And it's disturbing at the end of the day. Same
Well,
could be said of the
Mary
furry
Margaret,
obsession.
what I would tie that to is, so not only is Tyler Robinson, we know that he was in a homosexual relationship with Lance Twiggs.
Yeah.
That Lance Twiggs was transitioning black market HRT, according to a whistleblower on that. But we know that, and this is where, and I know it's uncomfortable for people, but to understand these subcultures, is to understand where this insanity comes from, where these obsessions come from, where it's really radicalization that comes from. In the same way
Yes.
that when we studied ISIS and when I was at Gitmo learning about radical Islam, I studied radical Islam. Charlie Kirk was shot with a bullet that had written on it, "Ooh, notice his bulge, what's this?" That's the bullet that was fired, and that was on the shell casing. And if you don't know about trans culture, if you don't know about furry culture, and specifically that phrase using someone who's attracted to a trans man, then you may not have known that. But there are people who
No,
saw that
exactly.
bullet casing and said that's exactly who you would find as the killer. And this is something that, quite frankly, it seems like the FBI just isn't quite prepared to actually dig into yet, is it?
No, and I mean, I think one of the other bullets, correct me if I'm mixing things up, there was another bullet that had Bella Ciao on it, which is the slogan that is often used by Antifa. So there's all kinds of different fact patterns here. But you're so right, Jack, and I know you and I have talked about this before, and Terry Schilling, who is on a minute ago, also is an expert in this. When you look into transgender ideology, if you're not looking at what these individuals were looking at that caused them to go down this slippery slope, you're not understanding the full extent of the problem. Many of these people start out normal, nice, their families describe them as hardworking, studious, kind, and they become radicalized on the internet. almost 100% of the time. It's this slippery slope of content, and they're consuming, for these kids who are trying to transition. Some of them start in pro anorexia circles, and then they stumble upon transgender content there. And then when they're looking at this transgender content, they're being encouraged to believe that they're born in the wrong body. But for some of these killers, when they're going around in these transgender circles online, they're being told that the people who don't agree with transitioning hate them and want them dead. They're being told that people like you and me would hurt them and kill them if we had the chance. They're being told that they need to eradicate people like Charlie Kirk because he doesn't want them to exist. And that's the kind of radicalization that is happening online that many people are just turning a blind eye to, saying that, no, these are communities that are loving and accepting people. But that's just not true. In fact, many of these transgender communities online are incredibly disturbing, very perverted. They're full of pedophiles who are seeking to groom children. They're encouraging kids to identify as another gender in hopes of helping them to become part of their own sexual fantasies. And, it sounds alarmist what I'm saying, but we know it to be true by the examples and testimonies of many people who I have interviewed myself. I have talked to many young people who were pushed down this path, who experienced these things, and they will tell you that the violence that is pushed on them in these circles is disturbing and very real. They're encouraged to think violently about people who disagree with transgenderism. In fact, the last conversation that Charlie Kirk was having when he was killed was about transgenderism and whether people who identify as trans should own guns. That was literally the conversation he was having. And so a lot of this, we're often pushed into a corner and made to think about these horrible crimes in a more black and white way than we should. There needs to be absolute examinations into the ideology of the people who are committing these crimes, who are targeting people like Charlie.
I couldn't agree more. And I would just add that, to tie back to the theme of the show, some of them start on Netflix. Some of them
Yes.
start just watching a regular Netflix show, and it's all of these reflections and it's all of these signals that they see in the culture, and they say, oh, well, that's an interesting character. I want to learn more about that character. So they go to Reddit to learn more about the character, and suddenly they're presented with other fans of that character.
Yes.
And suddenly I start identifying that way with fans of the character. I mean, you know what? I'm just going to say
Totally.
it. And I'm not gonna make you co-sign this, but I'm just gonna say it straight up that the My Little Pony fandom is pedophile coded, and it has been pedophile coded for a very long time. It's clearly what's going on here. I don't know when this happened. I don't know why the show hasn't come out against this. I don't know if they play into it, but it's sick. It's disgusting. And I would add, I'm just going to add this, the Star Wars fan community is getting the exact same way. It's getting the exact same way. That's why Star Wars is banned in my house. That's why I've never let my kids watch Star Wars. Why we don't have any of the branded stuff in the house. We just don't do it. We don't do it whatsoever because this stuff is sick. It's disgusting, and we have no idea what is now happening to our kids